Hello and welcome to Mind Shifters Radio. I'm Tim Hayes. I'm your host for the first hour, and today is Monday, March 24th, 2025. As always, we're grateful to everyone who's joining us here today, whether you're listening live or through the archives, as we spend another couple of hours teaching and supporting people in using some of the most powerful, effective, efficient, and accessible tools I've ever encountered. These tools are available absolutely free through the tireless efforts of Dr. Michael and Jeannie Rice on the website at whyagain.org. If you go to that website and click on the two words that say Start Here in the upper left-hand corner, it will take you to a page where you can download and read Chapter 24 of Dr. Michael Rice's book. His book is titled, Why Is This Happening to Me Again? And that chapter of the book contains a narrative description and explanation of the primary tool in this work. That tool is called the Reality Management Worksheet, sometimes called the Reality Management Wake-Up Sheet, and it's a tool I've been using to great effect for over 20 years now to improve the quality of my life and most of my relationships, and to turn any negative emotional experience I have into part of the infallible guidance system that each and every one of us has been given. You can also download the actual worksheet process itself. It's a simple PDF file. Click the link, download it, print it off, copy it as often as you'd like, and use it over and over again absolutely free. You can also download a whole host of audio files of shows just like this one where people have been stepped through that worksheet process. And if you choose to listen to them even repeatedly, they can serve as a powerful tutorial for you to help you get maximum benefit from these tools in the shortest amount of time possible. You can also go to your app store and type in the three words Heartland Aramaic Forgiveness. If you choose to do that, by the time you're done typing the word forgiveness, you'll see the glowing heart icon. If you tap on that, it will let you download a completely free and private app that contains the Reality Management Worksheet. It contains an abbreviated version of that worksheet process, and it contains a copy of the Dragon Klingon game, which is a wonderful way to introduce these tools to even younger audiences. We hope people do all of that soon and often, primarily because it tends to improve the quality of people's lives the more they actively apply these tools in their lives, and secondarily because it tends to prompt comments, questions, answers, and testimonials if you have any of those to share with us. We'd appreciate you doing so. You can send me an email at tjh@mindshifters-academy.org, or you can email Jeannie at jeanie@whyagain.org. That's whyagain.org. And if we get a question or a comment from you, we'll address it on the internet show, and then as time allows, send you a notification about what day and time that occurred so you can listen back to the archives for your feedback or input. If you're listening to us on live.needle.com/mindshiftersradio, we're grateful that you're here and we're glad you're listening. However, from that perspective, you can't type in a comment or talk to us voice to voice. So if you go to your app store and type in NEDL, search for Needle. NEDL, it is an AI tuner for live radio. Get the app, download it, open it up, log in, enter a few questions, and then you'll have the option to type a comment to us, which we can read during the show and respond to, or you can tap the phone icon and actually talk to us voice to voice. And we greatly appreciate whenever anybody does that, either sends us an email or types in the app and makes a comment or raises a hand to talk to us, because it makes it infinitely easier for us to live into our intention with this work. The intention we have with this work is to be of service, and that is just boatloads easier to do when we know how these things are landing for you. So please let us know, how was your weekend? What has been resonating with you as we're reading through A Walk in the Physical with Christian Sundberg, and we have plenty of time for comments and questions here on this Monday, starting into a new week of shows. I've had some real powerful sessions lately with people who are kind of waking up to patterns in their lives and almost shedding old patterns like they would shed concrete overcoats, and feeling so much lighter and so much more liberty to act without all of the fear-driven like templates or guidelines in their minds. And what's just amazing to me is how distorted our views of ourselves can be when we're in an unhealthy pattern, when we're stuck in any kind of negativity, when we're buying into any kind of a negativity, and how dramatically that can shift when, for whatever reason, we're willing to look at things differently, or we've got a little bit more in our energy reserves, or we've somehow or another given ourselves permission to question things differently, fundamentally differently. So if you're in one of those situations where you have a negative thought about yourself or somebody else, or there's a negative emotion active in your mind, there's a bottom line observation that says, in that moment, you can instantly know three things. The thought that you're basing that interpretation of your life on is either a lie or based in a falsehood. The whole impression that you're living in internally is an old tape playing in your mind. It's not about the current moment situation that's in front of you. And the third thing you can know is that if you sit spinning in thought about this thing, if you speak or act from that position, you're only going to make your life situation worse, not better. You can't improve your life situation when you're operating from a negative thought about yourself or somebody else, or there's a negative emotion active in your mind as you're choosing what to do, which action to take. And in that case, we have to recommend faith from the ancient Aramaic definition of the word faith, which is to, before you take an action, you make a conscious connection to your connection to your source. This instant, constant connection that's always with you, that you can get access to if you just ask to be shown. That awareness of your true nature as a miracle of life expressing in form, if you get in touch with that first and then take an action, things are going to go better. And that's acting from the rooted center of your being, is the way Dale Allen Hoffman describes the meaning of the word that came down to us through the Latin and the Greek and eventually into English as the word faith. So without a comment or a question to guide us, I'm going to return to reading from the book by Christian Sundberg titled A Walk in the Physical, because this is a book where he is talking about this awareness of yourself as every bit as miraculous as the most beautiful sunrise or sunset you'll ever see, as the most profound experience you've ever had in nature, whether it's looking at the Grand Canyon for the first time or watching chicks hatch in some kind of bird's nest, or, watching a horse being majestic as it prances through a field. You are that and more. That part of the consciousness of books like this is to help you understand that in a very real way, all of that you see that looks to you because you're interpreting it through your senses, it looks to you as though it's happening outside of you. All of that is arising within the field of your consciousness. So, as we were reading from Christian Sundberg's book, he wrote, "These experiences I was telling you about may seem interesting. However, this book is about your experience, not mine." He says, "I want to share these experiences just to give you a little bit better sense of the path that I'm on, so that as you venture deeper into the book, you may feel that we are on this journey together." His next section is titled, "Writing This Book." And I've read some of this on Friday, but I'm going to go through this part of it again, because it's so important to understand any teacher that wants to tell you that they are better than you is not a good teacher for you. Any teacher that preaches to you of fear, any teacher that preaches to you of urgency, probably not the best teacher for you. If what we've talked about on the internet show so far, if we've talked about with the support groups and the readings from The Way of Mastery, if any of that's really resonating with you, those teachers are probably not a good fit for you. So here Christian writes, "I am certainly no special person. I'm not a special person. I'm not so special that I should be writing a book on spirituality. I have no spiritual authority at all. Just let my words speak for themselves. I'm simply another deeply imperfect seeker. I'm a single fellow spark of the great divine flame, and I'm engaging in this extreme human experience just like you." And this reminds me of, over the years, as I was building a part of my career as a public speaker, that people would ask me for, my bio and my certificates and my trainings and my degrees and it would always just kind of sit cockeyed with me. It would just seem so bizarre. And I would give them some limited bio or intro to read. However, I'd get up there and start talking myself and say, "Please understand, even if I have 10 times as many degrees and certificates as somebody else, if what I'm saying is off the mark, just pay attention to what I'm saying. If what I'm saying resonates with you, use it in your life. But the vast majority of things I'm going to say to you don't have any validity because I've gotten a degree or because I've sat in rooms doing therapy with people for 50 years. Because I know people, I was trained by people who'd had 20 and 30 years experience doing therapy, and they weren't doing much of any good as they sat and talked to people. They were just playing a role. And so it's not the degrees, and it's not the certificates, and it's not the trainings that give the ring of truth to the words, the observations, and the questions that will be useful for you. It's the energetic resonance and the openness that's going to hold the value for you. So Christian goes on and he writes, "I have much fear and ego. I still suffer at times. I have so very much to learn. And yet I've come to know that there is no separate I in all of this. As strange as it may sound, there is no separate person named Christian. There's only what we call my, quote, my, close quotes, awareness, the awareness, consciousness itself that is having this amazing local human experience. I know in a tangible way now that my awareness actually transcends the human condition. And indeed, it transcends this entire physical universe. I'm overjoyed to proclaim that capital L love is the underlying power of all existence, and that there's nothing ever to fear. Love is the bedrock, the ultimate power, the undying foundation upon which all of this is built. Your life is built upon it too. And you, just as you are, your little spark of this light of conscious awareness, you are an incredibly important part of the great plan of love that is unfolding on this earth. I wish to remind you of that over and over and over again, as long as you're here. I feel it's important to write this book at this time because the collective consciousness of humanity is currently going through a great shift. I give thanks to our many friends in spirit who have guided me and helped me to bring this message into this physical reality in this way at this time. I'm writing this book as I feel called to share awareness of our greater nature and to spread the message of fearlessness and love that is inherent to what we really are. We are not our human story. We, you and I, everyone you've ever known, transcends the human story. And yet, the human story is so very meaningful. I'm not just the young man who collapsed in China from heat stroke. I am not just this body with its unique challenges. And I can say with certainty that you too are far more than the confines of your story. We relate to each other by our human stories. However, my intention with this book is to engage with you in a far deeper way. He writes, I came to this side of the veil in part to write this book. I want to reach out to you. I want to reach out to the real you. I seek to stir the parts of you that transcend your own story, your own history, your own pain and circumstances. I want to remind you of the unspeakably vast love that exists for you specifically. And I want to encourage you as you are on your meaningful human journey so that you can seek to use this experience to its fullest while you are here. And it's mind-boggling in a way because your human story isn't what gives you value. And yet you might find some value in the story. And you might be able to use your story to connect with other individuals, other sparks of consciousness. One of the people I was working with earlier today was having this deep realization that they just don't feel valuable or important. And yet, they're just a magnificent example of humanity, that they are so loving and they are so emotionally sensitive and they're so intelligent and they're so well-intentioned that they're spreading this loving energy. They're spreading healing and nurturance and compassion and understanding everywhere they go. And yet, from their perspective, they don't feel like they've done anything of value in their life. So when the story turns back on you, when the story is interpreted by you as something less than, that's where this bottom line observation is so useful. If you have a negative thought about yourself or somebody else, it's a lie. It's based in a falsehood. It's, as Guy Finley would point out, it's probably a part of the bitter fruit of a comparative life. When you're doing something and you throw a negative interpretation on it, you've done a comparison, you've done a judgment. You've stepped out of what's recommended by the Way of Mastery in Lesson 3, where we dismantle judgments. We dismantle perception and judgment. That's the definition of forgiveness as a process. We learn to step back and ask to be taught by life. We learn to open to the direct observation of the flow of energy that we call life. And then he writes a special thank you, to get back to what Christian's talking about here. He writes a special thanks to Tom Campbell, without whom this book would not have been written and without whose great deal of fear would not have been processed, without whom a great deal of fear wouldn't have been processed. So he says, I'm thankful to borrow a few of Tom's terms in this book, as I find them most appropriate for what I'm attempting to express. And so he says, thank you, quote, Uncle Tom, close quotes. And then he writes, what this book is written with the intention of providing an encouraging mental framework for the spiritual seeker, so as to aid the reader in expanding his or her own personal understanding of the larger picture. I do not possess any special knowledge. I only seek to remind you of the truths that already reside deep within you. Your deeper being, beneath all the stories of your life, your deeper being already knows these things. I wish to speak to that part of you too. In fact, despite the intellectual nature of many of the ideas presented in this book, the content requires the reader to consider not just with the thinking mind, but also with his or her deeper being. I forget what it was that I was listening to earlier over the weekend. It might have been a Guy Finley thing, but it was so close to what Dr. Michael Rice talks about when he says, in order to heal, you have to be out of your mind. You have to learn. I know what it was. It was a darshan from Lesson 8 with J.M. talking about the Way of Mastery, Lesson 8. And the darshans were these teachings that he did. So the book was channeled from 94 to 97. 1994 to 1997, the book was given in monthly installments over those 3 years. And then from 2011 to 2014, J.M. was called to give these video casts. He calls them, darshan is a teaching session. It's a lesson. So it's about an hour-long session where he would take segments of the book, The Way of Mastery, and talk about them in great detail. So as I read carefully and slowly with some musical interludes the first lesson of The Way of Mastery, it takes 33 minutes for that recording. You can find it on the mindshiftersacademy.org website. Lesson 3 from The Way of Mastery, lesson 1 from The Way of Mastery is just 33 minutes long. And in the darshans, J.M. took either 5 or 6 hours to talk about what's in those 33 minutes of reading. And one of those darshan lessons from the 8th lesson of the Way of Mastery, J.M. was talking about how you've got to be willing to trust something other than what your senses are showing you, outside your conscious logical mind. You have to understand that there's a lot more going on here, in, through, as, and around you, as you're having this life experience in the physical. There's a lot more going on here than what your conscious logical mind can express, can comprehend, or can show you, because your conscious logical mind is dealing from your past and from what little inputs of your senses. And so here Christian is saying he's writing this book to try and help that other part of your mind, beyond the conscious logical, beyond the 5 senses, the deeper part of your being, to get it to awaken to what it already knows. Christian goes on in this book and says, every person is beautifully unique, and thus every individual's spiritual walk will also be beautifully unique. No one can hand capital T truth to you, not me or anybody else. And yet, I personally know, and I wish to support your unique personal journey and awareness of our very real greater nature. And I seek to do that by providing ideas and suggesting a structure for the human mind to use to approach aspects of reality which transcend the earthly context, especially those aspects that are often misunderstood by mankind at this time. I do this with the intention that you may then utilize whatever aligns with your experience and appeals to your reason, and I encourage you to disregard the rest. He writes, Part 1 of this book is a series of statements which attempt to succinctly describe what is going on. And what is going on means in our physical existence on earth in relation to this physical reality and its interaction with a larger spiritual context. The intention is to suggest a concise framework of independent and yet coexisting ideas. These ideas might be useful as you pursue understanding of the larger reality and our place in that larger context. It's intentionally somewhat technical sounding rather than narrative, so as to adhere to the goal of providing a concise series of statements as a framework. So throughout Part 1, there are references to pertinent essays from Part 2. So he'll make these statements and then he'll have a note after the statement. Hey, if you want more about this, read this and this and this from Part 2. So you can more deeply explore some pertinent ideas if you wish. And so those references are labeled with numbers corresponding to the sentence or paragraph that might help clear up or more fully explain an idea that's stated in Part 1. He says Part 2 is a series of 160 short essays that speak to various important spiritual ideas. I have intentionally provided this content in short essay format because individual exploration often takes place in discrete steps or from a new idea and not necessarily as a comprehensive intellectual endeavor. In other words, some of us are going to learn this stuff differently. Some of us are going to really get into a little story and a vignette, and others are going to need all the puzzle pieces in kind of a logical, philosophical framework to fit together, and some of us are just going to intuit the next jump. So then he writes, parts 1 and 2 are primarily the body of this book, the contents of which are meant to be read independently and also to be considered as a whole. Part 3 is an informal Q&A where I attempt to speak to many common spiritual questions. He says, I certainly have no special authority to try and answer the big questions that I have listed in this section. I do not have all the answers, and I also have no interest in telling anybody else what to think or how to live. I only wish to serve the higher currents of love that are at work, and I want to do that by providing this information for consideration so it might be helpful to somebody. And part 3 also has some references to the essays in part 2. Part 4 is a short section containing simple ideas to consider as one pursues their own personal investigation of our higher natures. And part 4 also includes a suggested meditation exercise. This book is not necessarily meant to be read from front to back, but rather approached as the reader feels is best for them. This book is intentionally nonlinear. Certain key concepts may be repeated many times. Yet I feel this is important considering the depth of the current root assumptions about life on Earth that we are working to challenge. It's my sincere hope that this book might aid you in your journey. The human experience can sometimes be very challenging. Yet it is my hope that in reading these words and in sensing the intention within them, you will be encouraged in your own extremely meaningful walk through this physical world, and be reminded, at least in part, be reminded of who you really are. Then he has some disclaimers. He says, the way cannot be named. This is from the Tao Te Ching, right? The way that can be spoken is not the way. The Tao Te Ching opens with the words, the Tao that can be spoken is not the true Tao. The name that can be named is not the true name. As soon as we put ideas to reality, we're automatically incorrect about its full nature. As soon as we open our mouth and say something about what is, we are limiting it. As soon as we give reality a structure, we've reduced it to the structure that we have named. Thus, nothing written in this book is the capital T truth. Nothing. I can only write as a shadow of form, and then the mind of the reader can understand in the shadow of form. The greater reality of capital B, being, transcends all form. So no set of forms can speak fully of that reality. The thinking human intellect deals with forms, so the thinking human intellect cannot reach the full truth. And still, there is great value in pursuing intellectual understanding of both our local reality and the larger spiritual context. Our experience here is real, even though it is but a shadow of a far greater reality. The joy of a loving touch, the whisper of the wind, these things may speak more than any language can about higher truth. Art, poetry, and music can often convey more about our larger being than any words can. And yet, if I placed every great poem ever written into this book and shared every beautiful piece of music and every art form ever created, they would not in total, taken all together, be able to hold even a small candle to the rich beauty of what is within spirit. So how then can we do that with words? And yet words and ideas often have a most beautiful place, especially as perceived by the mind of the spirit who is genuinely seeking. If the words in this book at any point seem intellectual or dry, please try to sense the deeper living joy that I'm attempting to express through them. We try to talk about how each of us is creating our own experience in life. Each of us, as we sit and listen to someone reading or speaking or singing a song or giving a presentation, each of us is creating our own experience of that. I've talked a number of times about how often when we used to have our support groups meeting in person before the coronavirus restrictions kicked in, we would have one or two new people join the group. There'd be 8 or 10 or 15 of us in the room, and we'd have a quick hello, and then we'd start watching a video from Dr. Michael Rice. And we'd watch an hour of one of his 2-hour videos, and then we'd get together around the table to discuss it. And on a regular basis, newcomers would be upset and have the experience that Dr. Michael Rice is just so negative. Why is he so negative? And why is he so angry? And the rest of us sitting around the table were just shocked. Were we watching the same video? The talks that Dr. Michael Rice gives are about how your true nature is love. Everything is about tools to remove everything that's less than love. It's hard to imagine any other body of work I've ever been exposed to that is more focused on love and loving nature. And yet, routinely, we would have people sitting in the room with us, ostensibly hearing the same sounds coming out of the speakers, watching the same images on the television, and come away with a completely different experience. So, as Christian is asking us, please pay attention to the experience you're creating as you listen to or read this book. And if at any level you're starting to create an experience of it as being intellectual or dry, please try to understand that there's a much deeper, richer, living joy that Christian is trying to express through those words. And then Christian writes in the section titled, I Am a Fool. And he writes, I'm a fool and I know next to nothing. I say this I can say with certainty that in the context of what you might call, quote, the big picture, close quotes, I understand very little. And I certainly do not have what you might call, quote, all the answers, close quotes. And I will not pretend to know. The vastness of creation is beyond what our minds can imagine. The wisdom of Source is far beyond what any local mind can grasp. That includes my mind. It includes yours as well. Still, there's a lot that we can conceive of and master. And that process, taken as a process, as a growth expression, is indeed very meaningful and important. In other words, we can question and shake loose of some of the very limiting and sometimes actually wrong beliefs or impressions that we've been buying into or that we've been trained or conditioned to believe are true. And we can do that through this process of questioning. His next section is titled, Your Walk is Your Own. And he writes, no one can hand truth to you. It must be your own experience. This is because consciousness, your consciousness itself, is fundamental. Your consciousness is not limited, and it is not the limited objects that your consciousness beholds. It's not the limited ideas and these discrete thoughts of the physically oriented mind. There are no ideas or beliefs that anyone can hand you that will be, quote, the truth, close quotes. The truth of your being, capital B, being, surpasses and actually gives rise to all form. Your encounter with capital T, truth, must be your own personal experience. There is no other way. Thus, as you listen to the words of this book, I encourage you to try to elevate and question and evaluate, not just with your thinking mind, but with your deeper being, with your felt sense, with your emotions, with your vibratory energy. Examine and test these words through your experience itself, and allow your own experience and intuition to be your guide. You be the judge. If anything in this book is not helpful, please just disregard it. If something rings true inside of you, listen to that ring and follow it. Dare to investigate it. For in what is real, there is nothing to fear at all. This is so much like the Course in Miracles in its opening statements. A Course in Miracles. I'm trying to pull it up right now because I don't have it memorized. Near the beginning of A Course in Miracles, it says something to the effect of, nothing unreal exists, and nothing real can ever be threatened. Nothing unreal exists. And so, if you exist, and you have an experience of existing, you can't truly be threatened, because you're real. Nothing real can ever be threatened, and nothing unreal truly exists. So we have some time for comments or questions. We've got 10 or 15 minutes. I'll take a breath here and take a sip of water and see if anybody has any comments or questions so far with our reading so far today. Depending upon when I look at the app, it says we have 8 or 9 listeners active in the app right now. We may have others listening through live.needle.com/mindshiftersradio. So how is this landing for you? What's resonating for you as we read about trying to listen to these words, not just with our intellectual mind, but with our felt sense? How is it landing for you to listen to what Christian Sundberg is saying. Susan, are you available?
I'm available. Is anybody else trying to call in?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay. I have been loving this, and I've been reading. I don't know if you're familiar with this book. It's called The Practice of the Presence of God by Brother Lawrence. It's an old book. It's actually available as a PDF right on, it's public domain, it's free. And he's a chef in a monastery. And one reason he became a monk in this monastery is because he calls himself a very clumsy guy and he just breaks things. And he wanted to find a way to live his life without being too much trouble to anybody. And he began practicing doing everything for God. He didn't define God, although his orientation is Christian, but it's without any dogma, and therefore it's as universal as Christian Sundberg's book is, because Christian doesn't talk about God at all, as far as I can tell, and yet he calls his experience a spiritual one. And the thing that amazes me about this book and about Christian is both of them have an entire orientation toward being open to life from a very large perspective. And Brother Lawrence says he decided he would do everything. He washes dishes, he's the chef. A lot of these tasks that he does are basically, were basically unpleasant to him, but he decided he would dedicate them all and remain as best he could in dialogue with God, mainly just by doing everything for God. And the joy he gets out of it is amazing. And so, it's Lent in our tradition, and a lot of, they call it lower Protestant churches, which is not descriptive at all, but some traditions observe Lent and many do not. I know as a former Roman Catholic you did for sure, but one of my practices has been to just practice doing everything for God and appreciating everything that happens as a gift from God, even if it's physically painful or unpleasant in some way. And it occurred to me, because it's a kind of listening, it's a kind of being in the present moment and in the presence, capital P, of God. But one thing occurred to me is that everything that isn't that kind of openness is a form of idolatry. It's a distraction. And we have gazillions of idols. So it isn't exactly a question I have. It's just that I've got Christian Sundberg going in your readings, and I've got this book going, and they're both basically talking about being aware and looking upon this whole experience as being an opportunity to learn, no matter how pleasant or unpleasant it might be. I've finished reading. It's a very little book. I finished it, and I'm going to start over again and mark places to ask about. But I wondered if you had ever read that book.
Yes, I did. And it was a very difficult read for me because my interpretation of it was that he was promoting the value of suffering, and not from the archaic meaning of the word, which is to allow and tolerate without complaint, to openly accept and work with whatever happens. As I read it, he was trained in the school of valuing your pain and your suffering.
Wow. I didn't read it that way at all, but that's interesting.
That's just so much like what I was just reading, right? That each of us is going to. How many times have we had people listen to Dr. Michael Rice's videos and say, "Why is this guy so angry and so negative and so talking about everything other than love?" And the rest of us in the room thought that's all he talked about. Your true nature is love, and how to remove everything that's less than love, etc. So, yes, I do have the experience of having read that book. I was hopeful that it was going to be a gem for me, and I didn't resonate with it and it was interacting with all of my training as a Catholic, and all of that doctrine that says, Jesus died for our sins, etc., and you're born with original sin and all of that, instead of something more like original blessing, which is probably a lot closer to the truth.
Yeah.
I was taught in the Catholic upbringing something far more punitive.
Yeah, right. Well, and there's an awful lot of that going on during Lent. He died for our sins, and he died for our sins, and there's a lot of that. As part of Lent, we're supposed to fast, and we're supposed to add things as a way of growing. But I wanted to ask you whether at some point you might be interested in reading that book on the radio show, or is it too Christian as well as maybe
I'll review it and see, right? I mean, like, as we talk about so often with this work, the next time I read that book, I may get a very different experience of it than I had the first time I read it.
Yeah, that's true.
And as you've already mentioned, it's not that long a book, so I will, endeavor to read it again and then make a determination about whether or not I think there's a value in sharing it with the audience.
Okay. All right. How are you feeling mouth-wise?
Every day is better. I did a lot of good self-care over the weekend, and I'm probably going to be fairly back to normal in a couple of days in terms of talking ability and energy and comfort level.
Are you able to chew? I mean, you said these crowns haven't been put on yet. Are you dealing with raw posts in your mouth?
Yeah, it's. I can chew. I chew on the other side. The posts are a non-issue. They're just right at the gum line.
Yeah.
So it's essentially that there are these two teeth missing. So, and the biggest part of it is all of the disruption in the physical tissue, and so there's, the discomfort that has to be experienced, gone through, healed, whatever one you say.
Good luck.
Thank you. I'll take all the luck and blessings that are offered.
Okay, well, thanks for hearing me out on that book.
You're welcome. Hold on, because Celinda's put a hand up. Are you there, Celinda?
Yes, you're very quiet. Are you there? Can you hear me?
Susan, can you hear her?
I can hear Celinda. Yeah, she's soft, but I can hear her.
Yeah, I'm speaking right. The phone is just about down my mouth. I wanted to encourage you to go back and read the book again, Dr. Tim, just like Susan. It was at a major transition point in my spiritual growth and broadened my horizons expansively in relation to my Christian faith. And it was a delightful book when I read it, and I'd be happy to read it again. And one of the comments that I remember him making in the book was people would want him to expound on the dogma and doctrine of the blood of Jesus. And he would say, "Oh, don't talk to me about the blood of Jesus. It gives me a headache." I remember that, and I love that.
He also said that doing formal worship and devotions felt like a distraction from his practice.
Yeah.
And that he was much more comfortable peeling potatoes.
Yeah. Yeah. Down in the trenches, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, he was a sweetheart, and I really took him to heart.
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to share how meaningful Brother Lawrence is to me, and it's probably about time for me to read him again. Susan, can you send me the URL for where I could read him online?
It's just, all you have to do is just, I'll have to find it again, but just write in Brother Lawrence PDF. It'll pop right up. It's very...
Oh, perfect. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of those little tomes, and I'm getting very fond of little tomes in my library now. All right, that's it. Blessings.
Thanks.
All right, thank you both. Blessings. I'll thank you for your call. Turn off the microphones. Get ready to make our transition here. I'll remind everyone that we'll have to turn off the app and start it fresh for our second hour. Michael and Jeannie should be here within minutes. I will remind us all that we come from love. We're made of the stuff that we call love. We actually are love, and everything else is false. Blessings.